Hey, Tony.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I just got off the phone with a Ukrainian client who's really concerned about the way the economy's going. Apparently, the Ukrainian dollar is uh, falling in value compared to the American dollar. Like they went from 23 to 27.
Oh, really? Are you doing work out there or outsourced contractors or something?
Yeah, Experiment 27 does marketing for mobile app development companies, and we're working with a couple international trying to bring them into the US.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we did have a development team in Belarus actually, which is one of the axes of evil. Maybe not with Trump though. Maybe they're on the good side now. Very,
Yeah, for sure. For everybody listening, this is Tony. He runs a company called TenderScout, and basically all they do is help people sell using RFPs. And you guys watched the RFP video we did, and I got a bunch of feedback about doing 200 RFPs in a row and seeing almost zero response. So one of Tony's employees reached out to me and thought it would be a good idea for us to connect. I looked at his stuff. It's good. So in this interview, I want to run through what makes a good proposal.
yeah, I mean you are right. I mean most I guess my background is I worked with companies like IBM and Intel for a lot of years, doing a lot of government contract work, a lot of RFPs. But it's easy when you're IBM or Intel to win contracts because you can put hundreds of thousands of dollars into a contract and you've got the reputation. And I guess what I discovered when I went out on my own was that most companies win about 10% of what they compete for. 10% is pretty appalling, and it's not surprising that a lot of companies tend just to get out of the process pretty quickly. But the flip side of that is that because so many companies just don't bother with government contracting because of their experiences or because they're watching your videos, um, it actually means that there's very few companies that actually bother to compete for contracts. And of those companies, most of them are pretty appalling at competing for contracts. So if you can figure out what the magic sauce is, and I think we have that, it's actually pretty easy to win government contracts. It's much easier than winning private sector contracts because there's a set of rules that you're working towards, and if you do know what that secret sauce is, then it's a bit you can get on a gravy train pretty easily there.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see when it comes to filling out RFPs?
Yeah, I mean most people what they do is when they see an RFP, they have a look for keywords, and I guess they're unfortunately predisposed to compete for the opportunity anyway. So, if they're a tech company and they specialize in email systems and they see a tender for email systems, they naturally assume that, that's one for them. And really, the service delivery part is really just a small part of the opportunity. It's really are you a credible company to work with? Do you have a good track record? Can you do all the bits and pieces over and above the actual service delivery? I guess one of the big mistakes that I find companies make is that when you're responding to an RFP, the buyer assumes that you can actually deliver the service. Otherwise, you just wouldn't be responding to it. And it's all the other bits around that decide whether you win it or not. But most companies focus on proving that they can do the very thing that the buyer assumes that they can do already. So
That's exactly what we did at Dom and Tom. We would spend so much time just making sure that everything in the RFP matched that criteria, and then we'd use like templates for the rest of the stuff. So you're saying that's not right. What should people be focused on?
yeah, so I think the thing to really focus on first off is you need to establish an empathy with the buyer, and that really means you really need to understand what makes them tick. There's no buyer that wakes up on a Monday morning and says, I think this week I'm going to put out a load of RFPs because I feel I want to give to the supplier community. They're doing it because they have to. It's not a pleasant job. Nobody likes it. And really what they're looking for in a supplier is a risk-free purchase. So they want to find a supplier that is not going to get them into trouble, that is going to be able to deliver, that has good, strong governance practices, that puts risk mitigation at the forefront of their response. So I guess what they're really looking for in a buyer in a supplier is somebody who can deliver, but can do so at a very low risk.
What are some of those risks or those areas of risk that are worth looking into then?
So things like having a quality system in place, that's a big one. Having a good governance structure in place, having a single point of contact to deal with any issues, being able to articulate your communications protocol, your issue and risk management, having an escalation procedure. All of those sort of things give them the comfort that, it's not just the service delivery that you can do that, but it's that you've got their back covered across all the other areas of the project as well.
That's already a huge insight, because when we were filling out RFPs, I always assumed that building the product to spec was the most important thing.
I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, when people see an RFP for an email system, and I just pick that as an example, they assume that what the buyer is looking for is an email system. But that's really just the end of a process for them. And what you really need to do is dig into why do they need that system. And it's probably something like, communications within the organization are all over the place. They're using disparate systems. Some people are using Slack. Some people are using Pigeons, whatever it is. And the email system is to address an organizational challenge that they have. They're not just looking for an email system. It could be anything. But if you just focus on the bit of the solution that they've called out, you're really going to miss what their real need is, which is improving communications within the organization.
So how do you go about finding more out about those needs when a lot of the times with RFPs you can't really talk to them?
You can't talk to them. So ideally you know about the RFP before it comes out. That's pretty important. So you need to be tracking companies that you want to work with, getting yourself in front of them before the RFP comes out, and even sometimes catalyzing the RFP, helping to provide thought leadership into the RFP. Those are the sort of things that you should be doing. And in the public sector, it's kind of easy to do that because they all copy each other. So if you have, as we do, a big database of all the opportunities that government contractors put out, you can see which ones, still need to upgrade their email system or still need to do something that other peers are doing. Like right now, we see that there's huge growth in the digital marketing space. There's a lot of government organizations have been told to, become trendier or, talk to millennials a little bit more. So they're all investing money in digital marketing strategies without having much idea of what that actually means. But if you were to look around and see all the companies that haven't into the digital strategy, if that's what you do, then you have a great opportunity to actually start building revenue streams which are pretty poorly contested because you're the person telling them what they really need.
And then I think it's worth going into a little bit of the stats, because if somebody just watched the video that I recorded on RFPs, I was recommending not to do RFPs. What are some of the reasons you've seen to do RFPs? Why do you love RFPs so much?
I don't know. I think governments around the world spend about $3.2 trillion a year on government contracts. In the US, there's there's 70,000 federal contracts a year, something like that. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of contracts. And then when you look at state and look at county and city contracts as well, there's maybe 400,000 or 500,000 contracts to compete for every year. So there's loads of opportunities. And if you have a big database again and with a list of all of those companies in it, and there are companies other than TenderScout that do this as well, but if you can just track the procurement history going back over a few years, you can see what they've been buying, who they've been buying from, what values they spend. Because again, some contracts, just aren't going to be worth your while. They don't really fit your sweet spot. And then you can basically get that list of customers. You can see when contracts are up for renewal. And it's just like any other sales process. You got to go and work that list. You got to go and talk to those people. But I guess one of the things we find is a lot of companies, when they look at government contracting, assume it's all about the document, and it isn't. It isn't. It's just sales like anything else, and there just happens to be a formal element to it.
What does TenderScout do?
So we collate opportunities from all over the world, and we put them into that big database, and then we standardize that data, and we make it accessible to our users. And what we're doing is we're bringing lots of different systems and standards together into one common platform. So if you are looking for email systems, we can tell you where all of the email opportunities are around the world. We then qualify those opportunities. So based on your profile and what your sweet spot client is, we filter that list so that you're just looking at opportunities that maybe are the right dollar amount for you, that are in the right location for you, that buy from the same type of company as you are, you know, so that they're a company that buy maybe from a 50-man organization rather than a 500-man organization. And then we will help you, once we've qualified that list, we will help you put proposals together. And a lot of the time, it's really just reorienting you to saying, well, you focus on the service delivery because that's your core expertise. And we will provide you with templates and best practice around governance and how to communicate, quality standards, and all of those things that are pretty standard in a tender document, but they're probably not the bits that you focus on in your organization.
So TenderScout handles all of the research, finding the RFPs. You guys handle all of the data, like putting together the actual proposal, and then do you handle sending it too, or no?
Well, they submit the RFPs, but that's really just a matter of, you know, emailing it to the right address and on time, which is important. We did one yesterday actually, and I think we got it submitted with about 15 seconds to go. A little bit tighter than I normally like when you're relying on a broadband connection. So it is, yeah, it is kind of end to end, but I think the real value that we offer is in the qualification, making sure that you don't compete for opportunities that you really don't have a chance of winning, and trying to reorient you to focus more effort and more resource on those ones that you do have a good chance of winning.
So what do you do?
No, so we so basically what we do is because we've got all these customers already, or all these potential customers in our database also records all of the winners of contracts going back to 2002, I think. So when a new email opportunity comes up, we can see all of the companies that have won similar opportunities over the past few years. So as part of our reach, we would look at those companies and say, and connect with them and say, well, who do you think you'd be interested in competing for this? And do you think you could use our help? But back to I guess the first thing I said, a lot of companies either just don't want to compete for opportunities, or they feel that they have the capability to do it themselves. So we tend to find that for any given opportunity, there really is only a couple of companies that actually want help. So
maybe it's because they try it themselves, like we did at Dom and Tom for 6 months, and they saw 0 results.
Yeah. I mean, that does happen. And I guess one of the things that we've had to really work at in our business is trying to encourage people to participate in the process again. So we spent a long time doing that. It probably hasn't been the best use of our resources, trying to educate people who just don't want to be part of the process. So we've kind of we've moved our business a little bit from, you know, basically anyone who's potentially capable of winning a contract, to just really working with companies who actually have a desire to be a bit strategic about building a government revenue stream. So
RFPs are working really well for you. What's your win rate? Like, what does that actually mean in terms of sales? Yeah, I mean, just I guess at a very high level, the average win rate from a company competing kind of opportunistically is about 10%. Across the world, companies would win. An ordinary company who's competing reasonably regularly would win about 26% of the opportunities they compete for, which is still appalling. They're winning 26% of the RFPs that they're filling out? Of all RFPs, yeah. And then companies that use some sort of business intelligence or sales automation or some sort of external help would tend to win something like around 50%. And then the best companies would tend to win about 70%. So companies that are really strategic about it and are very focused on the opportunities that they compete for. And is that all RFPs, or is that just mobile and web development? It's mainly professional services industries. So it would be app development, digital marketing, accounting, legal firms, advertising, PR, all of those sort of companies where the award criteria is typically a little bit more than just how cheap are you. So if it is road building, you know, it typically comes down to, well, how much is it going to cost per mile of road? So how are you closing 1 in 3? Because when we did it at Dom and Tom, I did 200 of them, and the only one we closed was from a partner.
Well, I mean, it's really just a process, and I mean, back to one of the early things I said, there just aren't enough people doing this. I mean, just take Ireland for example. There's about 200,000 registered companies in Ireland, and I think maybe 10,000 of them would ever consider competing for a contract. So that's what, about 5% of the total available competitors who are actually competing. So, right away it's pretty easy. Or it's not that difficult. I mean, we've had companies come through our business with maybe one or two people in the organization winning $400,000 or $500,000 contracts, and purely because when it comes to tendering, and increasingly, it's not about the relationship; it's about how you present yourself on paper. And if you're a professional helping you put the paper together, then you can look as good as anybody.
So how does TenderScout's pricing look? Because it seems like you guys got this figured out.
Yeah, well, we charge, so it's a subscription service, and what we try to do is drive people to using the technology. The technology is built so that you can manage the qualification of opportunities, the finding of opportunities, the qualification of opportunities, and then pull down the templates that you need to fill to complete the proposal. So we charge a subscription for that, and that kind of varies depending on the number of users that you need or the geographic scope that you want to cover. But for most companies, they would pay $349 a month for access to the United States, for example, and for all of the support that they would need to put proposals together.
So how much of that is consulting versus just using the platform?
Yeah, so we would probably spend 2 or 3 days in the first month working with the company, getting their documentation in order, reviewing their previous tenders, explaining nicely to them why it hasn't been working out in the past and what they can do better in the future. But because I guess the technology takes over a little bit after that, our consultancy involvement is less and less, and it's really more about giving them ad hoc and one-off pieces of advice for particular opportunities. But they've got the documentation so they can manage the process themselves through the technology.
Oh, cool. So it's like half SaaS and a little bit productized service mixed in there.
Well, see, I guess what we normally do is, we do the first one and we put our templates and best practice in. And as part of the RFP process, when it's complete, you get feedback and you get your scores against the evaluation criteria. So it's kind of easy enough, to say, well, we got 7 out of 10 on the methodology, so we need to improve it in this particular area. I think the problem a lot of companies make is that either they ignore that feedback or they just do it the same way they did it the second time as they did the first time. But if you incorporate that feedback, you should improve the second time, and by the time you get to the third one, you should be winning, and from then on, you should be winning 3 out of 4 tenders.
So where are they finding these RFPs? Because we were using this site called RFPDB.
I guess, and TenderScout does something similar, but all of those companies or like FBO.gov or any of those big portals, those are all buyer-side portals, and their job really is to encourage you to write proposals. But I guess when we take the information from those or build our database, we're kind of putting a slant on it, which is a supplier-side slant. So one of the things that we will do is we will rate the quality of the buyer. Just things like, does this buyer publish award notices for the contracts they put out? Do they always award the contracts to the same company? Are their tenders or are their proposal documentations really badly written? Do they cancel a lot of tenders? So all of these sort of metrics that might make you consider twice whether you actually want to work with them. Because again, like the number of contracts that get cancelled because the prices that come in are too high, or because they realize that they really had no idea what they were looking for. In some places it's as high as 30%. And if you were competing for opportunities and you knew that 1 out of every 4 contracts was just going to be cancelled, that would probably make you not compete. I mean, I'd be interested to know actually of those 200 that you applied for, how many were just cancelled as opposed to that you lost.
Yeah, like that, dude. I didn't even know that data was available.
I mean, and that's one of the interesting things. Like when we talk to people, you're actually legally entitled to that information. You're legally entitled to be told why you lost, how you lost, and more than that, you're entitled to know why you got 7 out of 10 and why the winner got 8 out of 10 what the difference was. And again, that's why I say if you're getting that feedback, it's kind of easy because, simply put, you just copy whatever the winning one was for your next one, and you just keep improving. So after 2 or 3, you really should be as good as anybody else.
So using your system, then, people should be getting a project after 3 proposals.
Well, you should be winning after 3 proposals, yeah.
So are there any other big things that people get wrong when it comes to RFPs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess a lot of the time it depends on how engaged the client is. So typically, to give you a good example, people buy from people, and in any RFP process, risk mitigating factor is that they will like to work with the people that you're proposing to work with. But most people, when they're putting CVs together, they tend to be rather dubious, like they're looking for a job as opposed to they're presenting themselves as a candidate to participate in a project for you.
That's exactly what we did. We used to just pull CVs off of LinkedIn or just use whatever resume that they sent us when they applied for a job, and then would attach those to the proposal.
I mean, nobody cares in 2002 that you worked as a waiter somebody. It's not really relevant to the job in hand. Most people tend not to put pictures of themselves in. And while I know a lot of organizations have a kind of a HR issue about that, it makes a big difference. Better looking people are likely to win more contracts, or at least, if you get the lighting right, it will improve your chances of just looking more credible and just being a person that they might want to work with. But getting a CV from somebody in an organization can take months. I've actually been working with a company, and I think we've been working together for 9 months, and I'm still waiting to get good quality CVs that we can put into a proposal.
So one of the things that held us back there is we don't like to assign a team to a project until the project's actually in motion. So normally the team's assigned like 2 weeks after the project kicks off. So what have you seen work there?
So what you should do is put your A team into the proposal. And when you win the project, then you can come back and go, John is actually dead, or whatever the issues are that he can no longer be part of the team, and you just swap them out with somebody who's either equivalent or has superior skills, and that's never a problem after the contract has been awarded.
So you're saying just make up a team and put it on there?
The whole thing is so the thing is very malleable. Like a lot of contracts will say team has to be in place to start on April the 1st. And in a perfect world, maybe, but there's no way that the project is actually going to start on April the 1st. So it might be June or July, and you've no idea what your organization is going to look like in 3 months' time, or how the scope of the project is going to change. There's a million different factors that are going to impact your team. So don't be beholden to anything when you're putting your tender together. Just put your ideal scenario down. That's what you're going to work from. And if you need to change from your ideal, then you're doing that in collaboration with somebody, and they're actually going to pay you to do that, which is a much better situation to be in, because you're part of a contract.
So the other thing is time spent. So we spent 6 months with no results on these RFPs. How long would you recommend people spend on an RFP response?
Yeah, that's something that's very hard to get any real information on, but we've done a lot of surveys, and I guess when we look at it, we would suggest that about 6% of the contract value is what you should be spending on the pre-sales activity. So if you're a fully unoptimized company and you're looking for a $100,000 contract, you should probably be spending about $6,000, which might be 12 days or so, putting that first RFP together. And because a lot of the material is reusable, after 2 or 3 contracts, that should be maybe 3% of the contract value. And if you're not spending that, what I'd always say to companies is that's what the winner is going to be spending. And if you're not spending that, then you're not going to be the winner.
So how do you recommend people get started with RFPs?
Yeah, if you've never done one for your agency, what you really need to first of all figure out is whether there's actually a government market for what you're selling. So if you're in the luxury goods market, for example, or selling for...
Let's assume it's mobile app development.
So for mobile app development, there's what I would first do is I would go onto some sort of website like I don't really know whether, I mean, I don't really want to plug TenderScout here, but I guess one of the reasons we built it was because I couldn't find other websites that would easily give me a list of who's been winning what. But if you could find somewhere that you can see what kind of companies have been winning government contracts, and then do a little bit of research in those companies and see what they look like, how many people they've got, how they present themselves on the web. Do they, they might expose their development process, for example, or their engagement process, and see, can you mimic that? A good place to get started really is just to take some of that information and incorporate it into what you actively do, and use that as the basis for your template. What we would be happy to do with any company is review their initial tender. And I mean, we're pretty quick at this, so within 20 minutes I can tell you, well, you need this, that, and another section. So see if you can put it together, or if you're part of a business association, they might have things like your health and safety policy. Sometimes it's important for the tenderer to know that you know how to climb a ladder or to lift a box without damaging your back, even for mobile app development. So get all that together. We will review it for you, and we will tell you what it would score, and that basically gives you the baseline from which to build up from. Most RFPs score about 60%, and a winning RFP scores about 90 to 95%. So we can tell you what the gap is and where the areas that you need to work on are, and then if you want to engage with us, we can help you with that, or you can just go ahead and try it out yourself for a couple of times and see, are you in a position to do it for yourself?
So where can people go to take you up on that?
TenderScout.com. There's a contact us button there somewhere, and we will contact you back.
Okay, great. Any final thoughts?
Well, next time you're planning on doing a 200 RFP marathon, give me a call first, and if nothing else, I can get you some Red Bull or something just to get you through the process.
All right, Tony, thanks for being here.
Great. Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thanks for watching the video. Feel free to like this video to encourage this type of content. Subscribe to this channel for more B2B sales training. And if you need help with your agency marketing, check out experiment27.com. Thanks.